Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala abdillahi wa rasulihi nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een, amma ba'd. Inshallah ta'ala, I hope the stream is working and everyone can hear me and see me okay as we continue this second part of our questions and answers that were outstanding from the Sweden and the Denmark tour. I have currently in front of me around 26 questions, and I have some other sheets with other questions on as well, inshallah ta'ala. We will try to go through all of them bi'idhnillahil aziz. The first question says, how do I stay consistent when memorizing the Qur'an? You know, what I really love about this question is, I love about the fact that the question actually, first of all, tells you a great benefit, that really the key to memorizing the Qur'an is consistency. Because I want you to think about something. What is easy for you to memorize? Let's just say that you can memorize a third of a page of the Mus'haf every single day. 1/3 of a page of the Mus'haf every single day. Okay, 1/3 of a page of the Mus'haf every single day. How much does that work out? How long would it take you to finish the Qur'an? It would take you in the region of 5 years, including revision, including, making mistakes and going back. 1/3 of a page would take you in the region of 5 years. How many people are watching this video who've been practicing Islam for more than 5 years and have not memorized the Qur'an? A lot, I would presume. A lot. So really all we need is we just need a person to commit to 1/3 of a page a day. And even that can be on average. Like if for example, you did 1/4 of a page a day, and then you built up, and then you ended up doing 1/2 a page a day or whatever. But on average, 1/3 of a page a day, and you'll finish the Qur'an in 5 years. If that's too much for you, even if you did 2 lines or even 3 lines every day, you can still finish the Qur'an comfortably inside of 10 years. So that actually shows us that it's just a matter of consistency. Now, I'll just put that in context, that a normal madrasa of tahfidh, where the child is going every day, would probably expect the child to memorize between a page and 2 pages a day. And I'm talking about memorizing 1/3 of a page, or even 1/4 of a page. It's a very, very, very small amount that you have to memorize. Very, very small indeed, extremely small. And you only have to memorize that much. So it's about staying consistent. It's about having a routine. So you have to have a routine, and the routine has to work for you. So we talk about this. I mean, I remember speaking to Ustadh Muhammad about this, Hafidhahullah ta'ala. I asked him about it, and we can talk about when the best time is. The best time is after Fajr. The best time is, whatever time people select. But honestly, although that might be a general rule, the best time is actually the time that works for you. And the time that you can actually commit to regularly reading that 1/3 of a page and reading it, for example, 30 times. And then reading it, and you might start with a line, and then or 2-3 words, and then it becomes a couple more words, and then you read it again with a few more words, and then you read it again with a few more words. I'm talking about the length of Surah Al-Falaq. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. So for example, someone starts قُلْ أَعُوذُ قُلْ أَعُوذُ قُلْ أَعُوذُ, and they repeat it a lot of times. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ, and they repeat it a lot of times. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ, and they repeat it a lot of times. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ ما خلق, until the end of the surah. This is not a lot of work. Maybe you need to repeat it 30 times at the beginning, and then it becomes many, many more times after that, and maybe it's a couple of hundred times by the end that you've kind of gone through it. But it doesn't take a very long time to do that in terms of the small amount that you're doing and just repeating the words again and again and again. And obviously you have to have some time for revision, you have to have some time for reading a bit more every day and things like that. But it's just having a routine. So the first thing is, make the amount you're memorizing small, focus on repeating it more often, and have a routine that you can stick to. Number 3, have a system that works. Too many times we see kind of the blind leading the blind when it comes to hifz of the Qur'an. So we see that somebody who does not have hifz of the Qur'an is telling someone the best way to do hifz of the Qur'an. Wallahu musta'an. So go to the people who not just have done it, that's good. Go to the people who have not just done it. Go to the people who have done it and have done it for others. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 people have passed through that teacher and more and have memorized the Qur'an with them. They've got a system that works. Follow the system. Don't make your own system. Don't go backwards, forwards. Don't, take ideas. Just follow the system they give you. Have a teacher, because a teacher will hold you to account. Memorizing yourself is very hard. Teachers these days, you get an app. You read into the app, it sends it straight away to your teacher sends you feedback. That's what's available right now. You can download an app right now. I don't quite know the names of them, but you could download an app right now where you could read to a teacher online and it will find you a teacher, the teacher will give you feedback. But having a teacher who knows you regular and established is better. But I was just trying to point out how easy it is to get in touch with a teacher. Have a teacher abroad, have a teacher over Zoom, over Google Meet or whatever it is. And have someone that holds you to account for it. And inshallah ta'ala, in 3 to 5 years, 7 years is, extremely slow. You will have finished the Qur'an from 0 to complete, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And that just shows what you can achieve, because we've said before that the mutun ilmiya that you need to memorize as a strong talib ilm is roughly, aside from hadith, is roughly equivalent to the same kind of amount of content as the Qur'an. Yani the alfiyat and poetry and the mutun that you need to memorize, it's right around about the same size in terms of number of words or number of pages, probably around similar size to the Mus'haf, or a little bit more than that. Give yourself another 5 years, 7 years, and you've done the mutun of the talib ilm very precisely with a lot of detail. Add to that the hadith, give yourself another 5 years to 10 years. And now you have the ahadith. Many, you won't have every single hadith, but you've got a huge amount of hadith. And how long did it take you? 15, 20 years, and that's going slow. That is going extremely, extremely slow. 25 years even. How many people are watching this video, you are watching this video, and you have been practicing Islam as an adult for more than 25 years? I can probably say, I can say the same for myself. Practicing Islam as an adult for 25 years. In that time, you would say to the person, if you're a slow memorizer, you should have memorized the Qur'an. And the major mutun, for example, the AMAU prospectus for memorization, and a good chunk of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that's what I would have expected you to have done in 25 years as a slow memorizer. وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي. I'm not saying I'm innocent. I'm not sitting in front of you to say that I'm innocent. I'm telling you mistakes that were made and how to fix them. For this is my advice, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. You told us you'll mention some ways that people used to interpret hadith in different ways. Okay. That one I have to bring it. I'll bring it after the break, inshallah. Can you make tadabbur over hadith reading, talking about what you think the meaning is? So I'm not sure the word is quite tadabbur, but I do understand what the question means. Are you allowed to personally reflect upon the meaning of a hadith, or even discuss it as a group of you if you're not a person of knowledge of hadith? For example, Riyadh al-Salihin. That's what I understood from the question. So here we need to understand that personal reflection as an individual or as a group, doesn't matter whether it's an individual or as a group, personal reflection is something that is done after you understand the meaning, not before. So it's not correct to say that a person goes to an ayah and they don't know what the ayah means, and then they reflect upon it. What do you think it means? What do you think it means? What do you think it means? That's not actually tadabbur. The idea of tadabbur is you understood the ayah and you reflect about how it applies to you personally. And the same thing can be said about the hadith. You've understood the meaning of the hadith and you reflect about how it can be applied personally. You discuss as your group, how can this hadith be applied personally? To you, to us, what do we need to remember? What are the fawaid, benefits you could take from the hadith? Everyone give me a benefit. No problem, but the hadith has to be understood first. And it would be better if there was a person of knowledge in the gathering, even if it's not a person of senior knowledge, to be able to just listen to people's benefits and say, that's correct, that's correct. But there's no harm in a person bringing something, mimma yustafad min al-hadith. He's not bringing a hukam shar'i, or he's bringing a benefit. And this is for me, we all should remember, my brothers, that we should do this. But they have to have understood the hadith first. They can't come to a hadith they don't understand and guess the meaning among themselves. A hadith that is clearly understood, they've read the explanation of it, and then they say, my brothers, from this we should do this and we should do this. And this is a personal reflection between themselves. And Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Okay. So a couple of questions that would be a little bit difficult to do here. Drawing the chain of narration, that could be a little bit tricky, but I'll try to find a picture after the break to show you, inshallah ta'ala. How do we deal with different opinions, like the length of the beard or issues related to the hijab? I think that's a very, very good question. And it's not an easy question to be able to answer. It's not an easy question to be able to answer. It requires really a lesson, and I actually think there is actually a lesson. If I'm not mistaken, it might be Sheikh Sadiq's lesson that is on AMAU, on that topic, on the AMAU app as a full course. But what I want you to bear in mind, I'm just going to give you a few little things for you to keep in mind. Number one, not all ikhtilaf is on the same level. Okay? Not all ikhtilaf is on the same level. There is ikhtilaf which is not acceptable for us to disagree on at all. And it's not acceptable at all for us to disagree on it. Please, because it's the color. Exactly. Number one, not all ikhtilaf is on the same level. There are things that it is not permissible at all for us to differ over. For example, is it the same to talk about, for example, the length of the beard, the qabda, the grabbing, the beard to the fist length, or letting it grow as being the same as the difference between Sunni and Shi'i, for example. So the first mistake people do is they put all types of khilaf on one level. Rather, there are, and it's not aqeedah versus fiqh either. There are fiqh issues. Is it the same, the length of the beard versus whether you pray your 5 daily prayers? Whether you miss your prayers? What's the ruling of the person who chooses to miss a prayer? Is that the same as the length of the beard? They're both fiqh issues. So it's very important to understand that the matters of whether it's fiqh or aqeedah are not all on the same level. So the first thing we need to do is we need to be able to understand the severity of the difference and where does it rank in these issues. The lowest area of difference is a difference that there is no difference in it at all. And that is what we call ikhtilafu tanawwu', variation. So for example, one person says that the rope of Allah is the Qur'an, and one person says the rope of Allah is Islam, and one person says the rope of Allah is holding on to the Qur'an and the Sunnah, and one person says the rope of Allah is the Jama'ah. In reality, all of them are just variations of the same idea. The second lowest level of ikhtilaf is ikhtilaf where it is pure ijtihad. What I mean by that is there is no text, or both sides have the same text exactly, and both sides are interpreting it in a potentially valid way, and both of them are using valid principles to interpret that text, and they both have the same text, or neither of them has a text. The matter is just a matter of judgment. And there isn't a way to prove one of them over the other. One of them's right, one of them's wrong. But it is a pure matter of judgment, and it's not a matter where there is a text which can clearly demonstrate which of the two are right. This is the least and one of the lightest, I can't say the lightest, but one of the very, very lightest forms of ikhtilaf. And we should not be fighting each other over issues like that. For example, the famous hadith, لا تصلوا العصر إلا في بني قريظة. Or كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم, don't pray Asr except when you reach Bani Qurayza. This hadith, both of the two parties have the same hadith. There is no other hadith on the topic. Nobody asked an extra question. O Messenger of Allah, did you mean this or did you mean that? Both of them have that hadith, and that's it. That's all they have. That hadith and their knowledge of the Qur'an and the Sunnah, they have just that hadith. A group of them decide to pray Asr when the time comes along the road, because Asr has a time, the Asr time has started, and the Prophet ﷺ was encouraging us to go quickly. The other side says, the Prophet ﷺ said, don't pray until we reach Bani Qurayza, whatever time we reach, that's where we're going to pray. Both of them have the same hadith, they don't have anything extra. This is not befitting for us to make wala and bara over and fight each other over and attack each other over. The problem is, somebody comes to length of the beard and says, that's the same issue. But it's not the same issue. The problem is we don't know what type of khilaf we're dealing with. So we deal with either the smallest thing as the biggest thing, or we mix things up. We put them in the wrong level. And then there is khilaf where both sides have strong evidences that are used properly, but one of them seems like it has a bit more weight to it. And this is where we speak about al-rajih wal-marjuh, something which is more correct and something which we don't think is correct. We believe this one to be more likely to be correct, and this one we don't think. But we don't call it haqq and batil. We don't call it truth and falsehood. You're upon batil. But we say that your qawl is marjuh. It's not a strong view, because even though you do have evidences, even though you have used those evidences correctly, we still believe the balance of evidence is more on the other side. Now, here's the key point about rajih and marjuh. You have to have enough knowledge to know what's on both sides. Otherwise, you cannot comment on that issue. How are you going to come and say, my view is that the niqab is not fard? Okay, that view, is it based upon ilm? Is it based upon study? Do you know ma laka wa ma alayk? What is on your side and what is against you? Do you know what the other party has, so that you can say that yours is rajih and theirs is marjuh? The reality is most people don't. All it is they've heard something and it suits their desires. أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَى. Have you seen the one who took his God as his desire, or his desires as his God? He took his desires as his God, and he started to worship his desires, because ultimately he has no ability to know what is right or wrong, hasn't studied, hasn't made any effort to do it, but is still walking around saying, my view is rajih and your view is marjuh. Why? Because my view is, I like it, and I don't like your view. That's also not how we deal with this issue. But someone who's looked into it in detail, and that's why two people might discuss with you, one of them is on your side and one of them against you, and you might feel more affinity for the one who has a view against you, because he has it with ilm. He came and he said, Wallah, I believe my view to be stronger because of this, this and this. I think the hadith you're using is more likely to be weak. I think the hadith I have is stronger. You have more love for that person because of the fact that they've correctly used their ability to understand the issue, versus the one who comes and says, yeah, I agree with you. Why? Because it's you. I think just you know more than he does. So very important that the way we deal with khilaf, and very important we don't take issues of haqq and batil and make them into rajih and marjuh. That's why we don't say, for example, the view that Allah's names are taken as they come is rajih, and the view that they're to be interpreted is marjuh. We don't say that. We say haqqun wa batil. Allah's names are taken as they came, that is the haqq. Falsely interpreting them, that is batil. There is no, maybe you've got a view, I've got a view. It's haqq and batil. That's it. These are just a few points, but this will really help us. And also bear in mind, the fact that you respect somebody's view does not stop you from two things. It does not stop you from believing their view is wrong. People seem to think that if I respect someone's view, that means I have to believe their view is right and my view is right. That's not the case. I respect the way they've approached the process, but I believe they got the wrong answer. I respect the hard work they put in, but I believe the answer is wrong. And it doesn't stop me discussing with them and encouraging them or suggesting to them the view that I have, if I have it upon knowledge and I have evidences with it. It doesn't stop me to go and to suggest that to somebody, or to point it out, or to encourage them to do it. But what we'll discuss is, to what extent do we argue and fight with each other? To what extent is there wala and bara? Is there cutting off from people and saying, I don't want to, I have nothing to do with you? The cutting off from people is definitely in that issue of haqq and batil, the major issues of Islam, the issues that are known in the religion by necessity, the major issues of aqeedah, the issues of fiqh that are unanimously agreed upon and that are symbols of the ummah. These things are haqq and batil, and we are going to cut off from people. There's going to be enmity and hatred between us. Again, according to the severity of the issue and according to the extent that they've gone against the Qur'an and the Sunnah, there is going to be a degree of enmity and hatred. Whereas when I see the issue is rajih and marjuh, and I see that the person has used a correct method of working out, but I just believe they've come to the wrong conclusion. There can be a beneficial discussion, there can be back and forward, there can be akhdhun wa rad, taking and giving. There can be supporting my point and writing about it and defending it and them doing the same. There's going to be a degree of respect for the way that they've approached the issue. But I'm still going to believe there's a right and a wrong in it. When there are matters that are matters which are purely matters of ijtihad, it's very important that we do not have wala and bara upon these issues. And where I see this, my brothers and sisters, at the moment, for example, the issue of a da'iyah who is upon the sunnah and known for the sunnah and calls to the sunnah and defends the sunnah, and all of their lessons and lectures are in connection with the sunnah. And they made a decision to go to a particular masjid, which is perhaps a mixed masjid, which has some, different types of people in it, in order to preach the sunnah in that masjid. This is an issue of ijtihad. It's a judgment call. They might have got it wrong, and you might have got it wrong. You might see that the balance was maybe more negative than positive. They might see the other way around. But it's very, very important we do not have wala and bara upon this issue. I'm not going to cut off from that brother. I'm not going to say you and me are nothing to do with each other because you went to give da'wah in that masjid to the Qur'an and the Sunnah. Or I'm going to say, I advise you, I don't think you should go back to that masjid. I think the negatives came out more than the benefits. I say, no, you know why I'm doing it? Because of this, this and this. Have you spoke to mashayikh? I did. Some of our mashayikh said. And this is also another point. My ijtihad is not like the ijtihad of the mashayikh, especially the kibar of the people of knowledge. So sometimes, you get an issue where people will say, okay, the sheikh made ijtihad and I made ijtihad. طيب بس ليسوا سواء, they're not, you guys are not all, you're not the same. And your view does not have the same weight. So bear that in mind. Also, on those issues, we're not going to have al-wala wal-bara. We're going to have advice and we're going to have discussion and so on. And we might come to even the conclusion that there's a rajih and marjuh. We might even upgrade the issue and say, you know what it is? Even though it's an issue of ijtihad originally, I can honestly point to you 3, 4, 5 evidences. I think we can actually conclusively say that there's a right and a wrong in this issue, and so on. But if we understand how to deal with those issues properly and how to manage them, the hardest problem is the average person doesn't know what category to put an issue in. And so for them, the major issues that the ummah is united upon is the same as, ikhtilaf tanawwu'. It's the same as just having, a slightly different perspective on an issue. Very, very serious. So we have to learn that. I think AMAU has more than one class on it, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe Sheikh Sadiq, Allah yahfadhuh, he has a video on this on the AMAU app, inshallah. Regarding hidden defects that don't affect the chain. So this is a topic of Mustalah al-Hadith, because we did Mustalah al-Hadith. That was one of the things we did. And there are some questions here that came regarding the dawrah itself. I tried to answer them all in the sitting. So I tried to not to have the hadith questions with us today, but the one or two of those hadith questions kind of crept in. Would switching the Sufyans, Sufyan al-Thawri and Sufyan ibn Uyaynah, in a chain, wouldn't it create a new chain of narration? Is that still a negligible mistake? So it would be a negligible mistake if it's the case that whichever chain you took would both be authentic. So it's an illah, but it's not qadiha. It's not an illah qadiha. It doesn't affect the authenticity of the hadith. 2 chains, no problem. 3 chains, no problem. But if the end result is that all of them are still authentic, then the defect is not actually affecting the authenticity of the chain. If that's the case. It could get complicated, but generally speaking, somebody made a mistake in the 2 Sufyans, Thawri, Ibn Uyayna. There is some same shuyukh and students, and it could be a mistake people could make. If that is the case, then if the conclusion of the scholar of hadith is that these 2 chains would both be authentic either way, then this defect doesn't affect the authenticity of the hadith. And I think if you remember, the real care of the scholars of hadith always is to make sure that the hadith is authentic. That's what they really care about. And the rest of the things are secondary to that. It's all about making sure the hadith is authentic, or separating what is authentic from what is inauthentic. You said we should act upon hadith, but why should I act upon a hadith which is Hasan when we don't know for sure if it's authentic? So this is where we said that people get things wrong. And it's an okay question to ask people. It's good to ask it and get the right answer. First of all, the ummah came together, the scholars of hadith and the people of hadith, and the scholars of fiqh, and the scholars of this ummah in general, the people of knowledge, they all came together upon the permissibility of acting upon something which you are not 100% sure about in certain situations. So that's the first thing. It's very normal and it's not unusual at all. Let me give you an example. And this is an example that is much more shaky than a Hasan hadith. This is an example which is much more shaky than a Hasan hadith. You don't remember whether you have wudu or not. Okay? You don't remember. You remember making wudu, but you can't remember. You feel like you might have broken your wudu, but you can't remember if you did or you didn't. What do? You continue with your prayer. You pray. You made wudu and you are not quite sure whether you broke it or not. My point is that all the time you are making judgments in Islam, all the time, based on what you believe to be true without being 100% necessarily certain. In so many things. In judgments, if we required 100% certainty, virtually no qadi would ever judge a case between 2 people. There are so many times in Islam that we judge by what we believe to be true on the balance of the evidence. That's the first thing. The third thing is that the Hasan hadith is actually an authentic hadith. It's not a da'if hadith, it's an authentic hadith. But it's an authentic hadith which is marked as being slightly less than the highest standard. So if there is a clash, you can take that into account. But if there's no clash, what's the problem? If there's no clash with another hadith, what's the problem? Since the hadith itself is authentic, it fulfills the conditions of authenticity that we learned. So if it fulfills the conditions of authenticity, then there's no reason for you not to act upon it. It just has a marker that if there's a clash here, just bear this in mind. The fourth issue we can point to is that the scholars of Islam came together upon acting upon the Hasan hadith. They don't leave it. And so for you to take a view that goes against the people of knowledge and the conclusion they agreed upon altogether is not acceptable. What else can we say about the Hasan hadith? We said it fulfills the conditions of authenticity. So it is an authentic hadith. And the conditions for a Hasan hadith are still very, very high. It's not like we're taking guess. It's not like we're like a 50-50 guess. A Hasan hadith is not a 50-50 guess. A Hasan hadith is a hadith that is authentic, but maybe there's a slight reduction in the precision of one of the narrators. Just a very, very small reduction in the precision of one of the narrators. Not the likes of 50-50 doubt. So inshallah, those are some points that we can mention. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Why are the 40 hadith of Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, why are they so famous? Why are they so famous? Okay. Why are they so famous? So first of all, the reason the 40 hadith of Imam An-Nawawi are so famous, I'm going to point to you to maybe 3-4 things. Number one, he gathered the ahadith, we say, alayha madaruddin. The whole of the religion revolves around them. So people for sure give that increased importance to the ahadith, which are the whole religion comes back to them. So that is definitely going to give increased importance, insha'Allah ta'ala. The second thing is, it's a small text. It's not huge, it's not a big volume, it's just 42 hadith plus the additions of Ibn Rajab brings it to 50 hadith. And 42 from Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala and 8 from Imam Ibn Rajab rahimahullah ta'ala makes 50 hadith. Very small. The third thing is that the ummah accepted them. And we say the ummah accepted it or gave it acceptance. And that means that when this book came, people took it and they taught it, they explained it, and it was widely accepted by people. And people praised it, and it was, given out to people and taught to people. And that kind of acceptance also increases the fame of a book. Also the fame of the author, Al-Imam An-Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala. Do we fix problems with narrations? Or do we just tell that this hadith has a specific problem in a specific place? So we can't fix something unless it's fixable. So if we come across a hadith that has a problem, the job of the scholar of hadith is to point out that problem. If there is a solution to it, yes, to point out the solution. So the solution could be, for example, that a person says, this hadith has a weakness here, but there's a supporting narration here, in which case the problem is fixed. So point it out, and if the fix is known, then the fix can be pointed out as well. Like there's a supporting narration, this narrator had another person narrate the same thing, this that you think is a mistake isn't, because it's just been, it's not the person you think it was, it's not the mistake you think it was, and whatever it might be. So point out the mistake, that's the minimum. And then if there is a fix that is known for it, people know how to get around that or to support it, then to point out the supporting narration as well. Has anyone made a book about the golden chain or golden chains? I don't know from the top of my head of a book only on the topic of one golden chain, but there are books that contain a lot of discussion about what we call asahul asanid, the most authentic chains of narration. What do I do if I know that my madhab is wrong about something? Do I follow it or not? I think the best thing that can be said in this is the statement of Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, that the Muslims are in agreement that anyone for whom the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam becomes clear, it's not allowed for a person to leave that for anyone's statement, whoever they are. But the point here is man istabanat lahu sunnah. The sunnah is clear to them. So the key point here is the sunnah has to be clear. If the sunnah is not clear to the person, or the person is not entirely sure, then that person, and he has to seek additional information until they get some clarity. But for somebody to say, I know for a fact it's wrong, you have to leave what you know to be wrong and follow the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How can I help a boy who's 14 years old not to be influenced in school by TikTok, bad friends, living in a secular country? He's being taught Islam but doesn't have interest. This is a really difficult situation, and when people find themselves in that kind of really tricky situation, and I would say the very first thing is that don't lose contact with that person. If you give up contact, they might not have anybody telling them about Islam at all. The second thing is, I want you to focus on the most basic and easy things that connect a person to Allah. That can be dhikr, a few small words, alhamdulillah, subhanallah, astaghfirullah. Those few small words that just keep the heart with some sort of connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The third thing is prioritize the most important things first. So presuming the person's got a good understanding of Islam, as you said, he's been taught something about Islam, we're going to be focusing on the prayer, making sure that that person is praying. Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. The prayer prohibits immorality and it prohibits people from doing wrong. After that, we are going to look at the biggest dangers to that person. Is it bad friends? Is it social media? Is it a particular fitna? And we're going to try to talk to them, advise them and help them, not just how to keep away from it, but if they fell into it, how to repent and come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're going to keep giving that person beneficial reminders. And we're going to try to find ways to take them out of the environment if that's possible. Like if it's a parent asking about their child, we have to find ways to get them out of that environment. You have to find a way. If that's what's happening to your son, it's not permissible for you to live where you live. It's not permissible under any circumstances for you to live in a country where you believe that you're sending your son to Jahannam every day. That's not permissible. There's no khilaf on that issue. And that's not even an issue where there's any disagreement on. You say, I'm living in a country where I believe I'm putting my son's iman at risk every single day, and I don't know whether he's going to come back as a Muslim or a kafir. There is no khilaf. That is not permissible for you to be where you are, Allahumma, unless you're in a situation where you cannot possibly go somewhere else. There's no way you could go to a different city, a different school, a different country, even if it is with some degree of hardship. But to say that I'm sending my son to a school where I don't know if he's going to come back as a Muslim tonight, it's not at all in any way permissible for you to do that. So you have to take that very, very seriously as well. Also, if that person is, let's say, on social media, on TikTok, things like that, TikTok's not a good platform. Personally, we discussed, whether we should have an account on TikTok. And my personal view is just that it's not befitting. We are happy for people to post content. Like, I don't mind, the media team posting content through like third-party apps and whatever. And the content ends up there. People share it. People, take videos and share it. Alhamdulillah, that's very good, because we want the content to be there that the people who are there wrongly see that content. So we want people who are there who are wrong to be there, to see that content. But we ourselves don't want to have like a nice, this is Muhammad Tim's official, follow this on, because at the end of the day, that to me is only going to encourage people to sign up to it. Wallahu a'lam, it's a matter of ijtihad. That's my personal view on the issue after consulting, people who are more expert than me on social media, is that we decided to stay off it, not to have an official account, but to allow people to copy the content and just to post it as much as they like, because that allows that content to be seen by those people. So my point about this is, on TikTok, obviously we want him off the platform. But if he's on the platform and refuses to get off the platform, then we want him to be at least able to know that these people are good people. They'll give you good, nice benefits to follow. The next point with regard to this person is make them love Islam. Don't make them hate Islam. Habbibullaha ila ibadihi. Some of the Sahaba said, make Allah's servants love him. Make Allah beloved to his servants. In other words, don't make people hate the deen. Don't make it something horrible, something burdensome, something hard, something incompatible with your life. Don't lie about it. Don't give them a false idea. But do your very, very, very best to make Islam something beautiful, where they have beautiful experiences, amazing things that they do, that they go through, that they enjoy, and Islam is associated with good. Islam is associated with being rewarded, with enjoying yourself, with good things, and not that Islam is when someone takes a stick and just beats me. That's Islam, and that makes people go away from the deen. Don't get me wrong, there's a place for the whole issue of discipline and reading the Qur'an and all of that. That's a different discussion. But I'm talking about now this issue of the fact that you've got someone on the verge of leaving Islam, not interested in Islam at all, very, basically i'rad, turned away from Islam completely. The last thing you want their image of Islam to be is, getting hit by a stick or getting shouted at, or Islam is the reason why bad things happen to me. But you want them to love Islam for what it is, not for what it isn't, not to make up something fake, but to show them the beautiful side of Islam, to make them love what Islam is. And that's important about who you let them listen to as well. Because some people are rightly very harsh and very stern, and they shake the person's heart, and some people are softer, and each person will have the right kind of speech for a certain individual at a certain time. So there'll be a time where that person needs a maw'idah. They need to be shouted at, and they need to be, their heart to be shaken, and they need to be woken up. And there'll be times where that person needs softer speech, and you have to adjust the kind of people that they're listening to, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. How do the scholars differentiate between an authentic sunnah and one that is fabricated or weak? That was the purpose of our dawrah. That's why we had our dawrah. Our dawrah was there for that reason, for people to know what the difference is between what is weak and what is authentic, and how the scholars do that. So the answer to that is the dawrah itself. The content we did in the dawrah, which was نخبة الفكر في مصطلح أهل الأثر. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Very nice question here. There's a lot of hadith. What's the best way to learn them and the best way to implement them? What's the best way to learn them and what's the best way to implement them? So first of all, you should have a program for learning hadith. That's for sure. I can give you an example. go and download the AMAU prospectus. You don't have to be a registered student. You can just type into Google AMAU prospectus. And if you do that and you look at the prospectus, you will actually see that there is a pathway for learning hadith. The actual hadith itself. It starts with the 40 hadith of Imam An-Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala. After that, normally you have a book of Ahadith. I don't have it in front of me, but let me just put it in front of me so we don't make a mistake, inshallah. So if you have a look in the AMU prospectus and you have a look at the area where it says Hadith texts, so it starts with the 40 Hadith of Imam An-Nawawi. You then go on to Hadith of legal rulings, Umdatul Ahkam. Then you go on to Riyadh al-Salihin. Then you go on to Bulugh al-Maram. And then Al-Lu'lu' wal-Marjan. Those hadith that Bukhari and Muslim agreed upon. And then Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, Sunan Abi Dawud and Nasa'i at-Tirmidhi, and Ibn Majah and the Muwatta of Imam Malik. That's our syllabus for learning hadith. Let's just take a one that's easy. Let's just take, for example, the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi or Riyadh al-Salihin, which are both very easy for a person to be able to understand. How would you approach it? The first thing that I like to do when I'm approaching a hadith, explaining a hadith or understanding a hadith, is the very first thing to understand where's the chain in the text. In other words, who's the narrator here? To understand where this hadith is found. And I want to understand, first of all, in terms of the matan of the hadith, I want to understand gharibul hadith, any words that I don't understand in the hadith. Once I've understood the words that are confusing to me, I'm also going to look at the ruling of the hadith, its authenticity or its lack of authenticity. I'm going to look at the rulings that are taken out from the hadith, and I'm going to look at the benefits. So rulings are things like this is obligatory, this is forbidden, this is recommended, this is prohibited or disliked. And benefits, just general benefits. For example, the benefit of asking a question you already know the answer to benefit others, for example. There's benefits in the hadith. Once you've taken that, you've taken the unusual words, you know the ruling of the hadith, as in is it authentic or not. You know the rulings taken out of the hadith, what's obligatory and forbidden, recommended, and you know benefits from the hadith. Then after that, you can talk about implementing it. And very simple, you're going to come across a hadith that you can implement today and a hadith you can't implement today. The ones you can't implement today, you have the intention that if I were to be in that situation where I could have implemented them, I would. If I can advise others to implement them because they're in that situation, I will. Otherwise, any hadith that I can implement, I want to put it into practice, and that is part of zakat al-ilm, the zakat of knowledge. What would a beginner talib al-ilm's schedule look like, both with school and work and also without as a full-time student? So for me, I think that if you look at the AMAU prospectus, it's going to give you a very good idea of what the full-time schedule would look like. As for the person who's got work and school, then I honestly suggest that it would just be a subset of that prospectus. For example, just the Aqidah pathway, the fiqh pathway. But now we of course have the intermediate student of knowledge program, which is just launched on AMAU Academy, which could be something maybe more suited to people who are doing a lot of work and study. So you could have a look at the details for that program. It's just been announced recently. So that could also be something. So you've got the intermediate student of knowledge program, you've got the advanced student of knowledge program, which is more towards the full time, or a person who has a lot of work commitments could either choose to take a part of the full program like just the Aqidah and Fiqh pathway, or they could, for example, choose to take the intermediate student of knowledge program, which is a little bit easier to do. Again, topics and books, you will find that all, inshallah ta'ala, in the AMAU prospectus. I believe the AMAU prospectus it's for the full program. It doesn't have yet, as far as I can see, the intermediate student of knowledge program in it. And I don't know whether it has, at the moment, anything on memorizing the Qur'an. Not just yet. So maybe that will be updated also in the future. But also, the daily routine is going to be split between memorization and understanding. There's got to be a time for memorizing. Qur'an gets priority. Once a person, for me, I don't really need them to finish the Qur'an, but I need them to have proven themselves able to finish the Qur'an, inshallah. So, for example, 15 juz, 20 juz, they're very much on the road to finishing. That person, I would suggest to them that it is good for them to just start adding other things along with their memorization, if the Qur'an teacher is happy with that. And it might be 25 juz, it might be 23 juz, where we just say, look, they're good now, we're happy with that. Let's just, along with their hifth, let's just add in there some mutun and some other things that they have to memorize, inshallah ta'ala, and an understanding. And that can be a reading program, structured reading, unstructured reading. Structured reading as in reading through your curriculum books, reading the works of a particular scholar in order. Unstructured free reading. And it can also be attending lectures. And the AMAU Academy prospectus is a good place to start with a good idea of how to do that, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Can you discuss or repeat Marfoo Hukman? You are a bit fast. So I think for repetitions, we would just say to people, just watch the videos over again, inshallah ta'ala. If you watch the videos, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, over again, I think that you would find it easy to understand. You could slow it down from there. But briefly, for when people want to know what it is, we're looking at hadith that the chain doesn't reach the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It only reaches the companion. It doesn't say the Prophet said, the Prophet did. It doesn't reach the companion. But the content is something that could have only come from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So for example, a Sahabi says something about what will happen Yawm al-Qiyamah. And that Sahabi is not known to narrate from Ahl Kitab. It's not something they could have figured out from the language or could have understood from the Qur'an. This is something that they are saying about an event in the future or on the Qiyamah, which we don't have knowledge of, and they've spoken about it. They would not do so unless they heard it from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the chain doesn't look like it's connected, but the content of the hadith proves that that hadith was heard from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because that Sahabi would not have said something like that unless they had heard it from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there's a question about the hadith Qudusi, and how can it be, if we say the hadith Qudusi is from Allah's speech, that Allah's speech is outside of the Qur'an? So first of all, we need to understand there is a difference of opinion about the hadith Qudusi, whether it is the speech of Allah Azza wa Jal or not. And my personal view, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best, and I mentioned this to you, is that it is min kalamillahi Azza wa Jal. It's from the speech of Allah Azza wa Jal, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Because there isn't anything that would stop that being the case. There isn't a reason to say otherwise. Because one misconception, maybe the questioner has, is that Allah's speech is only the Qur'an. Rather, Allah Azza wa Jal speaks whenever He wants, to whoever He wants. All of the kutub al-munazzala, the books that were revealed, when they were revealed and not corrupted, were the speech of Allah Azza wa Jal, the Torah and the Injil. But the Qur'an is the greatest of the revelation and the most perfect of the revelation. Allah spoke to Musa, وَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا وَكَلَّمَهُ رَبُّهُ. His Lord spoke to him. In Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah Azza wa Jalla spoke to him. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, تِلْكَ الرُّسُلُ فَضَّلْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ مِنْهُمْ مَنْ كَلَّمَ اللَّهُ. These messengers, we preferred some of them over others. Some of them Allah spoke to. So there is nothing at all to limit the speech of Allah to the Qur'an. But the Qur'an is a particular revelation from the speech of Allah Azza wa Jalla that has unique qualities that is not found in anywhere else. And there are qualities in the Qur'an not found in the Hadith Qudusi, not found in the previous scriptures, not found in anything else. And there are things that make the Qur'an different, like reciting the Qur'an, any tilawat al-Qur'an, as an act of worship. We don't do tilawat al-Hadith as an act of worship. So the Qur'an has unique qualities, but that doesn't stop there being speech of Allah outside of the Qur'an. And the issue of the Hadith Qudusi is an issue there's some difference of opinion about. Are you supposed to say أو كما قال if you're translating a hadith by meaning? Yes, it would be better. Definitely it would be better to do so. So if you're going to bring a hadith and you're not quite sure if you've got the exact meaning, you should say أو كما قال, or as he said. Or you could say, or the likes of it, or close to that, or something near to that. The point is, you say a word that indicates that you're not 100% sure that those words are exactly correct. So if I have a hadith in front of me from Sahih Bukhari, I'm reading directly, I'm going to read it. I'm not going to say أو كما قال, or as he said. But if I'm reading a hadith from memory and I'm not 100% sure, is it fi, is it min, is it ila here, and I kind of got it, or maybe, just maybe, I might say أو كما قال, أو قريبا من ذلك, أو نحو من ذلك, and it's close to that, or near to that, or that's, or how he said. Or if I narrate a hadith by meaning, no doubt. What is the difference between Salafi, I think Jadid, or Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah? The beautiful thing about this question is answered for you on the Aqeedah pathway of the AMAU Academy. And you can go to the AMAU Academy, go to the Aqeedah pathway, the very early lessons, Al-Madkhal ila Ilm Al-Aqeedah, the introduction to the science of Aqeedah. And inshaAllah ta'ala, you can find what you need there, bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. In general, we want to understand that there is only one group that are upon the truth. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, with regard to the breaking of the Jews and the Christians into groups, وَسَتَفْتَرِقُ أُمَّتِي إِلَى 73 فِرْقَةٍ. My ummah will break into 73 sects. كُلُّهَا فِي النَّارِ إِلَّا وَاحِدَةٍ. All of them are in the fire except one. He didn't say all of them are in the fire except 3 or 4. All of them are in the fire except one. This one group may have different names for the same thing. So let's describe what is this group. They are what the Prophet ﷺ and his companions are upon. ما أنا عليه اليوم وأصحابي أو كما قال. What me and my companions are upon. من كان على مثل ما أنا عليه اليوم وأصحابي كما قال. The likes of what me and my companions are upon. If that is the case, the likes of what the Prophet ﷺ and his companions are upon, if that is the truth, what me and my companions are upon, therefore it is the Qur'an, the Sunnah, and the Sahaba. The person is following the Qur'an and following the Sunnah, so that takes out the groups that don't follow the Sunnah, and in light of the understanding of the Sahaba. And that will get you down to one group. If you study al-firaq, the firaq, the different groups and sects, you'll actually see that you start off with all the groups. If you take out of it those groups that refuse to follow the Sunnah in whole or in part, so that gets rid of the Shia, gets rid of the early Khawarij, it gets rid of a group from the Mu'tazila, the Jahmiyyah, and quite a lot of groups go out of that by the rejection of the whole or part. You now come down to the way the Sahaba understood it. And if you apply that filter, you'll end up with one group. That one group, who are the followers of the Qur'an and the Sunnah and the Sahaba, may have some slightly different names. From these names is Ahlus Sunnah, the people of the Sunnah. From these names is Ahlus Sunnati wal Jama'ah, the people of the Sunnah and the Jama'ah. They're not separate. From these groups, or from these names for the same group, is the name Salafi, the person who follows the way of the early generation, in the way of the Sahaba. Athari, the ones who follow the narrations and follow the Sunnah. Ahlul Hadith, Ahlul Athar, Ashabul Hadith, and other names as well. These names, all of them, are names for people who follow the Qur'an and the Sunnah with the understanding of the Sahaba. So it's not a choice between them, they're just variations of the exact same concept, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Can you explain in short the differences between the four madhabs, inshallah? Wow, that's a big question. That is a big question. Again, you can find it on the AMAU Academy. I keep saying that because it's true. You can find it on the AMAU Academy, inshallah ta'ala, in way more detail than I can give you. How do you explain the differences? I don't even know how to approach the idea of explaining the differences. Clearly, we need to understand something about the history of how fiqh developed. So we need to understand that when the Qur'an came down, there were not four madhabs. Okay, that's the first thing. When the Prophet ﷺ died, there were not four madhabs. In the time of the Tabi'een, and the generation that followed the Sahaba, there were not four madhabs. Rather, was there anything even called a madhab? Certainly not in that time. Because the reality is that a madhab is like a curriculum. All of them are trying to get the Qur'an and Sunnah, and you should be trying to get the Qur'an and Sunnah through them as well, not trying to replace the Qur'an and Sunnah. If you're trying to replace the Qur'an and Sunnah, that's the wrong use of a madhab. The madhab is a curriculum to make it easy for you to study fiqh, to be able to reach the Qur'an and the Sunnah, insha'Allah ta'ala, and to do that in the easiest, tried and tested way. And so these tried and tested curriculums or curricula were not available in the early days of Islam, not even in the time of the Tabi'een. However, as the generations went by, the next generation starts to come, next generation comes, there start to be a curriculum that is put by the followers of a particular great scholar. Now at this time there's not four. There's not four. There's way more than four. There's lots. But these lots are a great scholar known for his knowledge of fiqh and known for his ability to teach it to his students and to pass it on to his students, and his methodology in all the supporting sciences of fiqh. And what happens is his students start to write his views and start to write down his approach and his methodology, and it starts to become a curriculum. And let's just say we have 50, for example, what's naturally going to happen is that some of them are going to die out. They're going to die out because maybe the students did not produce the works of that sheikh, or the sheikh didn't write them and they weren't passed on, or there wasn't enough for it to become a proper, fully fledged curriculum. There were views, but there were not like a full set of subjects and methodology, or there were not followers who added to it. Because you have to remember that the Imam is not the one putting down the curriculum. That's a big misconception, to be honest with you. The Imam is the one doing what? Starting the ball rolling by being a great, famous, knowledgeable Imam who has views and fatwa and classes and teachers, and he starts the ball rolling. I don't know of any of the Madhahib where the Imam is the curriculum. Perhaps you could say it is somewhat closer than others, but where the Imam is the curriculum and that's it. There are then many great scholars come after that Imam who, while sticking to the rough curriculum of the Imam, they tweak it, they change it, they add to it, they write about it, and that becomes the new curriculum, and it's a living thing, and it just keeps on going and going and going. Eventually we get to a stage where the curricula that are left, the curriculums, I think that you can say that in English, or the curricula that are left down to basically 4 that are considered to be tried and tested and have stood the test of time. Are they the best 4? Not necessarily, no. There's nothing to say that they are necessarily that any one of them is necessarily the best that was ever there. But that quite simply, those are the ones that have stood the test of time. Those are the ones where their students became scholars and they added and adapted and put things in, and then their students, and then it became famous, and then people took it on. And a lot of the spread of the Madhahib actually happened because of the differences in government, as there was a government who promoted the Shafi'i Madhab or the Hanafi Madhab or the Maliki Madhab, so that Madhab spread around the countries where that government was in control. So the Ottoman Empire, famously with the Hanafi Madhab, you have, for example, the spread of the Maliki Madhab in North Africa. All of this down to particular empires or particular governments that ruled over countries and enforced or promoted the madhab within that. All of them are attempting to get to the Qur'an and Sunnah. That's what the goal is. The goal is not to follow Imam. The goal is to follow the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But this is intended to be a curriculum that's tried and tested to give you the ability to work with the sciences connected to fiqh. That includes usul al-fiqh and maqasid and all of the topics around it, qawaid fiqhiyya, all of the many topics that come around fiqh, to give you a curriculum that works for them. And they're all trying to get to the Qur'an and Sunnah. At the same time, there are some differences you can point to and you will learn about. You can start by learning about, for example, some of the differences between the Hanafi madhab and the other 3, which make it a little different in terms of some of the ways they approach usul and things like that. You can also start to see where the madhabs fit in history and where they developed and where they were popular and not. And you can learn more about the Imams and their biographies and things like that, but that's probably much more than we can do in this sitting. But just to give you a little bit of an idea about it. In theory, all of them would be any of them would be an acceptable curriculum to follow. In practice, there is an issue, which is that a lot of times when you get the madhab, you get the aqeedah of the people teaching it as well. And this is the problem. So you get the, let's say, Hanafi madhab, which in itself, no problem. And what you get with that is you get somebody teaching Sufism and Maturidiyya and Maturidi Aqidah and whatever, because those have nothing to do with the Hanafi madhab, but because they've become welded to it because of historical things that happened, you sometimes get more than you're asking for. You sometimes get things that are not actually anything to do with the madhab, but have become welded to it because of historical occurrences. So it's very important you take whichever madhab you take it from a teacher who is very strict upon the Qur'an and the Sunnah, and who wants you to reach the Qur'an and the Sunnah, not to suffice yourself with his view or the view of the Imam of the madhab. And if you do that, it doesn't matter which madhab you take. However, my personal advice would be that if you have a really good teacher upon the Sunnah who wants you to reach the Qur'an and Sunnah, it's all about what resources are available to you in the place you live. So for example, when I went to study, we studied in a country that was upon the Hanbali madhab, and that was our teachers. Every teacher was Hanbali, more or less. And so we didn't have an option to study the Shafi'i madhab, even if we wanted to. We studied fiqh muqaran, we studied comparative fiqh, we studied all four. But to actually delve deeply into one madhab, we didn't have a lot of choice. It would be very difficult to find a Shafi'i or Maliki or Hanafi teacher. If you found one, you would find it hard to find two or three. So it was very much the case that you had pretty much to take what was available to you. And that could be the same. It could be in a country where the Hanafi madhab is widespread, you've got a good teacher upon the Sunnah that you have a lot of respect for, who wants the Qur'an and Sunnah, and that teacher is teaching Hanafi madhab, but if you wanted the Shafi'i madhab, you couldn't find it because there just isn't Shafi'i teachers in that country, or very few. So you take what's easy for you. Al-Madrasatul Umariyya, at the moment, we are teaching a madhab al-Shafi'i. That's the madhab that is, you get kind of for free with AMAU. And we'd like it if we could teach other madhahib as well. But it would require the teachers and it would require a big expansion of the program. So at the moment, you're getting the Shafi'i madhab, and in the future, you never know. You might get the Hanbali, Hanafi, Maliki, Madhahib, depending on the resources that we have and the teachers that we have. But right now, what we have, what's available to us is Al-Madhab al-Shafi'i in general. So there's a few hadith specific questions. We can just take a couple of them before we take a break. We're going to be coming back after the break, inshallah ta'ala. We still have a few more questions to deal with, inshallah ta'ala. So there's one question I'm not quite sure, I don't really understand it, about the types of fabricated hadith. I'm not quite sure about that one. Can you explain again An-Nasikh Mansookh, At-Tarjih and At-Tawaqquf? So An-Nasikh Mansookh, we were talking about hadith, but we could be talking about more than hadith. We're talking about abrogation. So the whole idea, to simplify what we're talking about, is that a ruling comes along and another ruling comes after it that overrides it. That's very simply, like, super oversimplified version. It's not the detailed professional version, but the simplest version is you're going to have a ruling. Another ruling is going to come after it that wipes it out, that supersedes it, that overrides it. So you had a ruling, maybe something is haram, another ruling comes that it's halal, and the haram gets crossed out. This can happen in the Qur'an in various different ways. The ayah might be there, the ruling can change. The ayah may have been in the time of the Prophet ﷺ replaced with another ayah, and various combinations of that, and in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. But one of the key things that we have to have right here is we have to know that one of them came after the other. And we have to be sure that there isn't a way of reconciling. Because if one of them says this is haram and the other one says this is allowed, you can't bring them together, generally speaking. So, okay, did this one come first and this one came second? Yes. But if you're in a situation where they can be brought together, so there's no need to discuss which one came first and which one came second. So if you're in a situation where you have two seemingly conflicting reports, two reports that seem to go against each other and conflict with each other. And with these two reports that seem to go against each other and they seem to conflict with each other, you have a way to bring them together, then that's what you have to do, bring them together. A way to understand both of them without cancelling one or the other. If that's not possible, then eventually you get to a stage where you say, okay, do I know that one of them came first and the other one came second? And it's not only that, I mean, it could be mentioned in the hadith specifically. It could be said in the hadith that this abrogated the previous ruling. This wiped out the previous ruling. The Prophet ﷺ said, after he had said this. For example, the Prophet ﷺ said, Kuntu, I used to. He said, I used to forbid you. I used to forbid you. Or he said, Nahaytukum, I had forbidden you. I had forbidden you from visiting the graves. Then he said, Ala fazuruha, or kama qal. He said, you should visit them. So here the Prophet ﷺ is saying, I had prohibited you before. Now I'm telling you to go. That's clear. The Prophet ﷺ himself is saying, I used to say don't go, and now I'm saying go. For the men. So this issue is the issue of An-Nasikh Mansookh. If there is a way to prefer one narration that seems to be conflicting with another over another, you can't join between them, but you prefer one or the other, this is called tarjih. This is what tarjih is. Preferring one view over the other. So we call rajih and marjuh. The one that we prefer and the one that we don't. When it's not possible to do any of those things, you can't join between them. You don't know any dates to say this one came first and this one came second, so this one is cancelling the other one out. You don't have any way to prefer one over the other. In the end, if you've exhausted all your options, you have at-tawaqquf. You have no choice but to say, Allahu a'lam. I don't know the answer. I'm going to pause until more information comes to me. And that doesn't mean other people don't know, but for you personally, say, I am not able to come to a conclusion about these two reports because I can't bring between them. I can't prove one came before the other. I can't find a reason why this one is better than this one. So I'm just going to pause and say Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. We're going to take a small break for our Isha prayer here in the masjid. We're in the UK right now. And inshallah ta'ala we'll be back after that with a few more questions. We may need another Q&A session possibly because there's still questions more to come, but I'll see how many more questions I have inshallah ta'ala. There are a couple of questions that I've found a bit difficult to do, but I will see if I can possibly do them, fix them during the break inshallah ta'ala. So what we will do is just take a little break now, and I will just Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wassalatu wassalam ala abdillahi wa rasulihi nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. So before we go any further, there was a question asking to see an example of the Shajaratul Isnad, in the tree drawn out. What does it mean to draw a tree of the chain of narration? So if we can just ask to put that on the screen inshallah. So if you have a look here, you should be able to see there is something drawn like a tree. This is just an example. It's not a particularly good example or anything, but just an example, just a quick graphic I found online. So you can see at the top there is the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then there is the Sahabi, the one narrated from them and from them, and then downwards you can go through the different chains. 6 people narrated from one here, and then from there's 3 people, no one narrates from the second one, another 3 people on each of the next 2, and then only 1 person from the 4th one. So this is an example of just drawing a chain or a tree, which some people ask to see an example of. Otherwise, there are better examples, but this is what I could find in the short space of time that we had. So we can put that off now, and we can resume back to our topic, inshallah. There are still a lot of questions, more than we're going to be able to deal with in this one particular session, but I will just... someone asked for stories of Tasheef, and I mentioned about the issue of the lizard. I would mention, wallahi, the one that comes to mind, I'll not mention, some of them I couldn't find just now, I was looking for them, but the one that came to mind as an example of people getting the wrong understanding of Hadith. So people just completely getting the wrong understanding of a Hadith. So, for example, there is the person who says, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited selling bread. Prohibited selling bread. Yeah, bread is not allowed in Islam. It's not allowed to eat it, to buy it, or to sell it. What happened? The person read about the prohibition of al-khamr, and they read it, they miswrote it or misspelled it as al-khubz, bread. So the person, they have got a printing mistake, a writing mistake, a spelling mistake, and they've probably twice, one person wrote kha mim ra, then the other person wrote kha mim zai, then the next person wrote kha ba zai. And so the person ends up saying that, Ya Shaykh, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't allow us to eat bread. How can a person live without bread? What he didn't allow us is al-khamr, alcohol, wine, not bread. You misread the text. But these examples are many, and there's so many examples of them in the books, biographies and stories and what have you, of people who misspelled things and didn't put the dots properly, and they got themselves confused about a particular issue, or they got themselves thinking something was not allowed when it was not something which was prohibited. I've still got over 100 questions to deal with, so we're not going to be able to do all those now, but I will do what Allah Azza wa Jalla makes easy for us to do, and then we'll possibly have some left over for another time, inshallah ta'ala. What's wrong with me for being too afraid to practice my religion openly? For example, letting my beard grow, shortening, my garment above the ankles. Maybe the same goes for some sisters. There's no doubt that shaitan whispers to a person. الشيطان يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء. Shaitan threatens you with poverty and commands you to do things that are evil and immoral. That's what the shaitan does. The shaitan tells you that if you practice your religion openly, people will look at you, people will stare at you, people will laugh at you. Maybe people will take you out of your, they'll kick you out of your job, or they'll discipline you at school, or people tell you, and the shaitan whispers to you, and you think things are going to happen. There are two things that can be very helpful in this. The first is that you attach your heart to Allah. And you say, you know what it is, whatever is going to happen to me in this world If Allah is pleased with me, that's all that matters to me. And from this is the statement of the magicians of Fir'aun when they accepted Islam and they accepted the religion of Musa. What did they say? After Fir'aun said, I'm going to nail you to a tree and I'm going to crucify you and cut your hands and feet off from opposite sides, what did they say? They said, فَقْضِ مَا أَنْتَ قَاضٍ إِنَّمَا تَقْضِي هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. They said, "O Fir'aun," as Allah tells us in the Qur'an, do whatever you want, because whatever you're going to do to me, it is in this dunya. إِنَّا آمَنَّا بِرَبِّنَا لِيَغْفِرَ لَنَا خَطَايَانَا وَمَا أَكْرَهْتَنَا عَلَيْهِ مِنَ السِّحْرِ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. We have believed in our Lord so that He might forgive our sins and what you forced upon us of magic, and Allah is better and more lasting. This is the mentality. فَقْضِ مَا أَنْتَ قَاضٍ. What are you going to do? You're going to take my job away? And what you know, you're not going to be my friend anymore? And okay, whatever you're going to do to me is in this dunya. فَقْضِ مَا أَنْتَ قَاضٍ. You put your trust in Allah. And then you realize that if you are prepared for that, and you're prepared to give up something in the dunya for Allah, that actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for people, and it rarely is as bad as you think. And actually, if you deal with things with wisdom, you deal with it well, and with wisdom, and you think about how you present yourselves to people, actually the problem doesn't happen. Or the problem doesn't happen nearly as bad as you think. And I give an example of that, people going for job interviews. I personally believe the time you should bring up prayer and things like that is in the interview. People say, in the interview, but what if I don't get the job? But isn't it better that you be scared to practice your religion later on? Like somebody shaves their beard, goes for the interview, comes after 2 weeks with a big beard. That's the wrong way of doing things completely. It displeases Allah, but it's not even an effective way of getting people to facilitate things for you by Allah's permission. Rather, you go in with the beard and you say, this is me. You want to give me the job? I'm a Muslim. I'm going to pray. You want to give me the job? Yeah. Then you never have to ask after that, because they know you're going to pray. They know you've got Jumu'ah. They know you've got a beard. And you don't have a problem. Whereas it is a bit harder, for a sister, she's not wearing hijab, then she comes into work the next day wearing hijab. But again, is she doing it to please Allah, to come near to Allah? Allah will make it easy. And if she loses that job, Allah can replace for her from the wealth of the heavens and the earth, because all of it is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's normal to feel a little scared about things, but it's very rare that it's as bad as you think, and actually it's the shaitan amplifying it and making it worse. What do you do if you have a specific sin that you tell yourself you'll quit, but you keep doing it again and again? Are you a hypocrite? So I think we answered this question before, but it's good to answer it here, I think. I think we answered it in the previous session, to be honest with you, but we'll just kind of go over some points. The issue is, every time you do a sin, you feel regretful for it and you intend not to do it again. What you don't do is that you tell yourself, I'll quit it in 10 years' time. I'll quit it in 5 years' time. You quit it immediately and you try not to do it again. And if you fall into it again, you recognize that you have a Lord who forgives and punishes. You ask Allah to forgive the sin that you've done. And again, you resolve not to do it again. I'm not going to do this sin again. And if you do it again, once again, you pick yourself up. What you don't do is say, I'm going to do it for 5 years or 2 more weeks or another year, or just next year I'll quit. but you quit straight away, and you intend not to do it again, inshaAllah ta'ala. How do I stop having bad thoughts about other people? First of all, realize having bad thoughts about other people is wrong. In Surah Al-Hujurat, where there are a number of lessons with regard to manners and behavior, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu jtanibu kathiran min al-dhann. Inna ba'd al-dhanni ithm. O you who believe, keep away from a lot of suspicion. Indeed, some suspicion is sin. Bad thoughts of people, the first thing you need to do is realize it's wrong. The second thing you need to do is to realize the same way you have bad thoughts of people, others will also have bad thoughts of you. So you deal with people as you would like to be dealt with. Find excuses for your brother and realize that it doesn't matter if you are wrong. A lot of times people say, well, I'm not going to make excuses because he might really be like that. But that itself is beloved to Allah, for you to make excuses, even if he really is like that, or he really did do that. Make excuses for your brother, for your sister. Maybe he didn't see me, maybe he didn't think like that, maybe it wasn't. You know, so many times we see, for example, two brothers walk past each other. He didn't give salam to me. He's not speaking to me. He's not giving me salam. This brother's not giving me salam. When actually it's nothing about the brother not giving salam. He just didn't hear you. He didn't see you. He was preoccupied. Well, what if he didn't give me salam? Is it not better that you maintain the brotherhood between you, even if it means that you made an excuse for him? Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take everything into account. But for you to at least make an excuse for your brother, it preserves the brotherhood of Islam. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. The believers are nothing but brothers. It preserves the brotherhood of Islam for people to have good thoughts about each other. Now, it's very easy. You know, this brother walked out and didn't listen to me. وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ, maybe he had a bad stomach and he walked out because he needed to go to the bathroom. Maybe he walked out quickly because he remembered something urgent. Maybe an urgent call came. Maybe something was in his mind. Maybe for 100 reasons. Make excuses for your brother. It's not a hadith, but it's a valid saying. Make 70 excuses for your brother. تَمِسْ لِأَخِيكَ سَبْعِينَ عُذْرًا. It's not a hadith. But make excuses for your brother. No problem. Make a reason to say, maybe this, maybe this. And through this, people will make excuses for you. And you'll preserve brotherhood between people. You'll be rewarded even if what they did was actually true or what you thought in the first place. You'll still be rewarded for it. And you will have taken the higher set of etiquettes and manners and behavior. How do we protect ourselves from extremism? We see many youngsters giving fatwa and indulging in takfir. Please give advice. So I think the very first thing is to understand that extremism in Islam is of two types. Al-ifrat wa tafriq. Al-ifrat is going too far, and al-tafriq is not going far enough. And both of them are extremism. So the person who, for example, goes into, let's say, any of the well-known types of extremism, this is extreme. And the person who doesn't practice their religion or is extremely lenient and who just does whatever they want and, you know, adopts the ways of the kuffar and behaves like them, this person is also an extremist. They're also an extremist. Because extremism in Islam is ifratun wa tafriq. Those who go too far and those who don't go far enough. And in everything you'll find these two types of extremism. Not just in masail, for example, al-jihad or takfir, but you'll find extremism in everything. these two extremes. So you'll find people, for example, with regard to, let's say Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiallahu anh, the noble Sahabi. There are those people who raised him to the level of a god, they worship him instead of Allah. And there are those people who spread bad words about him and speak badly of him, and those people who celebrated the death of Al-Hussein radiallahu ta'ala anhu and the likes of that from the Nasibah. Both of those are extremists. They're both extremists. One who was not happy for Ali radiallahu anhu to be the Khalifa, وَتَنُصُّهُ الْأُخْرَى إِحْدَأَهُمَا لَا تَرْتَضِيهِ خَلِيفَةً وَتَنُصُّهُ الْأُخْرَى إِلَهًا ثَانِي. One of them was not happy for him to be a Khalifa, the other one believes he's God. Both of them are extremists. We're not saying they're both the same, but they're both extremists. Both of them are extremists. The extreme liberal is an extremist just like the extreme crazy person is an extremist. Like, the two of them may be different in terms of severity. And no doubt the person who's killing other people is causing more harm than the person who is doing nothing. But both of them deserve to be called extremists. What is required from us is al-wasatiyah, to be balanced upon the Qur'an and the Sunnah. And I will tell you one thing, and people don't like me for saying this, and I'm not here to win any fans, so alhamdulillah. But people don't like it. One type of extremism breeds the other. And I know that neither side likes to hear that. Neither side likes to hear it. Wallahi, it's the truth. You don't like to hear it, but it's the truth. The truth is that this extreme takfir, extremist ideology breeds the other side. Extremely liberal and, anti-Islamic and, watered down Islam in response to them. And this watered down, half-baked Islam breeds extremists. These guys who go and do all these crazy things in the name of Islam. These two feed off each other. And that has been the case for all of the firaq ad-dalla, the misguided groups and extremist groups in Islam. They feed off the other. Extreme liberalism and secularism and just everything being easy and don't care about your religion and don't practice and don't pray. What happens? You'll see an extremist group come out. An extremist group comes out, what happens? You'll see it feed into people turning away from the religion. And that's the reality of extremism. The solution is al-wasatiyah. Not to be half-hearted, one foot in Islam, one foot out. That's not wasatiyah. To be upon the Qur'an and the Sunnah. Because the Qur'an and the Sunnah isn't extreme. And that's why it's so sad to hear people calling the Qur'an and Sunnah extreme. To say that, for example, you're growing a beard, you're extremist. Why am I extremist for growing a beard? John, Mark, Jack can grow a beard and it's fashionable. I grow a beard, I'm an extremist. Why? The Christian nun can cover her head. Why can a Muslim sister not cover her head? Why she become an extremist for? You people, when COVID came, you all covered your faces. Why, when a woman wears a niqab, is she an extremist for? And that's a qissa as well. That I remember just before COVID came, there were some countries that were talking about banning the niqab, and then Allah Azza wa Jal put a niqab upon all of them for how many years? They all end up wearing niqab inside and outside. And that just shows you that this whole thing of people thinking that practicing Islam is extreme. But the reality is the extremists on the easygoing liberal side of things actually see Islam as extremism. And I just have a simple question, and it's a genuine question. It's not. I'm not having a dig or a go. It's a genuine question. if you saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam today, what would you think of him? Because if you're telling me growing a beard makes me extreme, or you're telling a sister for putting niqab makes her extreme, or you're telling me going to pray 5 times a day in the masjid is extreme, or you're telling me that going to seek knowledge is extreme, or you're telling me that not copying the kuffar and not resembling them is extreme, I want to ask you, if you saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what would you judge him to be? If you say you judge him to be balanced, I don't think you're telling the truth. Because you're judging me or someone else for those same things that the Prophet ﷺ did. I'm not trying to do anything other than what he did. Then they say, no, you're extreme because you're doing it today. He wasn't extreme because he was doing it in his time. First of all, the Prophet ﷺ was doing things in his time that were different to what the non-Muslims were doing. So that argument isn't very strong. But even more than that, where's the expiry date for Islam? Where's the ayah that says 500 years after this ayah, this rule doesn't apply, this hadith doesn't apply? There isn't one. So practicing Islam in the best way possible is not extreme. We see so many situations of people, says a girl, she says, I don't mix with my male cousins, and my parents or my relatives call me extremist. You know, this is the kind of thing we expect from the non-Muslims. You know, the non-Muslims, I've been called all kinds of things. You know, walking down the road, names of famous terrorists, Friar Tuck, Jesus, all kinds of things. People will call you. And people will think you're a monk. They think that, you know, they have all kinds of names. This is what we expect from the kuffar. One time they're shouting at you the name of a terrorist. The next minute they're calling you Jesus. The next minute they're calling you a monk. This is like what you expect from them. Like, you don't expect to see Muslims using these kind of labels towards people who practice Islam normally, just because they practice it. Islamic knowledge is a major way to keep away from extremism. Good Islamic knowledge. Knowledge will never ever hurt you, inshaAllah ta'ala. Proper Islamic knowledge, sought in the correct way, is never ever going to cause you a problem, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. It's only going to bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and help you to avoid those extremes. Because if you know what Islam tells you to do, that itself is never, ever, ever going to be extreme. But I tell you where I think this false extremism label comes from. I honestly think it comes from non-Muslims and their religion. Because actually, to see someone, for example, going to church, praying regularly, you know, that in their communities could be seen as extreme because it's rare. But for us in Islam, our religion is a part of our day-to-day life, and it's not extreme for us to practice our religion publicly and openly according to the Qur'an and the Sunnah based upon knowledge, and that itself is not extreme, inshaAllah ta'ala, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Is it permissible to purchase something labeled as interest-free when an extra fee is added later? Is it allowed to order things with an invoice knowing a fee might be charged if payment is delayed? So I think this question might be difficult to answer without the conditions and understanding it properly. But I would say one thing, that it's very important when you see something labeled as interest-free, that you're very, very careful that it really is interest-free. So you want to make sure that it doesn't have late payment fees, that it doesn't have things, hidden interest. For example, people say this card is interest-free, but if you don't pay within a certain amount of time, there's interest. Now, a person might say, well, I always pay. I pay every month. It's automatic. But that's still interest. It's still riba. because the contract is signed to say, I will pay riba if I don't make the payment. And that itself is a kind of riba. The Prophet ﷺ cursed the one who devours riba, the one who takes it, the one who gives it, the one who writes it, and the one who witnesses it, and said they're all the same. Hum sawa. So that being said, you signing a contract that says, I agree to pay riba in this situation, is a part of that entire system of riba. So you have to be very, very, very careful, especially extra fees. So this extra fee, I'm not sure if it's a fee that comes at the point of sale, in which case it could be okay. So there's a fee at the point of sale, or if it's a fee that's added later on as months go by, or if you don't do this, there'll be a fee, then this is most likely to be riba. Ordering items on credit, knowing a fee might be charged if payment is delayed. Generally, no, you can't have late payment fees. Again, that's a long question subject to a lot of discussion, but this is a general answer, inshallah ta'ala. How can a Muslim try to be successful financially without craving the dunya? The first thing is, take your mind away from the whole idea of being successful in this dunya, and treat this dunya as you would treat a toilet. You need to have one, you need to use it. You know, you appreciate the fact that it's available to use. It would be pretty horrible if you didn't have one available. But you're not particularly in love with it or attached to it, or, you know, craving the day that you can have two of them instead. That's what it is, and that's a very good example. You know, the fact is, people used to have to go outside in the cold, in the heat, to use the bathroom. Now you have a bathroom that you can use inside the house. But ultimately, you're not like craving it. When can I upgrade my toilet to a new toilet? Like it's just a thing that you use because you need it, and you appreciate the facility. But you know, it's not the thing that your heart is attached to. That is what the dunya is supposed to be to us. And وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي, I'm not saying I'm perfect in this, but that's what the world is supposed to be to us. It's supposed to be something that is there to use, to be able, you live here, you try to earn Allah's pleasure through what you're doing, and you have things that Allah has provided for you, and you're grateful for those things, but your heart is not craving more and more and more that you don't need. And then be honest with yourself. The reality of the dunya is there are three things. There are things that are haram, get rid of them. There are things that are halal, but they're not making you nearer to Allah. And this, I would say, get rid of as much as you can. It's not like the first category, because the first category is something which is outright haram. This is halal, but it's not getting you nearer to Allah. You know, someone says, you know, every night I go and I play, I sit around with my friends drinking coffee and we relax, or we go play sports or whatever. And you say, halal, alhamdulillah, nothing, you're not doing anything wrong. But is it bringing you closer to Allah? If you say yes, because it's helped with my health and with my, but really all of those times, every day, all of them are bringing you closer to Allah. If not, leave as much as you can and keep what is actually benefiting you in the sight of Allah, what is actually being written for you as a good deed. But no doubt, the second category, all of us fall into it at times, and the first category as well. But the second category, we all fall into it. But minimize what you can and manage with what you can, so that you try to focus yourself upon what actually benefits you with Allah. And that is what success actually means. So financial success, what is financial success? Financial success for me is not having to beg, not having debt, being able to fulfill my wajibat, like being able to put a roof over the head of my family and food for them. That is, for me, financial success. As for having a bigger house, a more comfortable house, and if I get it, alhamdulillah, I'm not going to say no. I'm not turning down a nice offer of a 5-star hotel and then I'm going to say to you, just give me a 1-star tent. I'm happy. You're going to give me a 5-star hotel, jazakallahu khairan, appreciate it. I really appreciate it. But honestly, I'm not bothered, whatever it is, because ultimately what matters is basic financial success. I don't need to beg somebody. I don't have debt, especially not debt that I can't manage, inshallah ta'ala. And I can provide the wajibat, the things that are wajib upon me. On top of that, it would be nice to have a little bit extra to give sadaqat. Would be nice. But that little bit extra, you've got to be true to yourself. I'm looking for the extra for sadaqah, but what are you doing with the extra? You're going and buying, takeaways, and, you're going to buy a new car. And don't let the shaitan fool you and tell you that this extra that you're getting for sadaqah, you're actually not using it for sadaqah. Not even a bit of it. You're actually using it to fund your own, the comfort of your own lifestyle. Be honest with yourself. I'm not saying it's haram. I'm just saying be honest with yourself. That's success. Anything beyond that, does it really matter if I have 2 cars? I can't drive 2 cars at the same time. Does it really matter that my car is the latest model? I just want one that doesn't break down on the road. Does it really matter that I live in the best area? Just want an area that's inshallah safe and comfortable. It's nice to have a comfortable house. Alhamdulillah. Whatever is there, whatever is easy. And I think when you redefine what that financial success is, you actually stop craving the dunya, inshallah ta'ala, and you start thinking of financial success in a very, very different way. So for example, savings. You start thinking of savings how? You're thinking of savings as, okay, I don't mind having a little bit of money put away because I don't know what might happen in the future, and that might be a cushion, inshallah ta'ala, to keep me away from debt and begging and the things that I don't want to do. However, do I really need to have this huge amount if that huge amount is actually getting in the way of my deen and causing me to be delayed in knowledge, in seeking it, and in the goodness that people are doing? I'm not in the masjid, I'm not praying in the jama'ah because I'm busy getting this large amount of money for something that might or might not happen. So you change the way you think about success. Advice for a woman to obey her husband, and matters elaborating from that. So I think the first thing is Islam has a very beautiful system. Very, very, very beautiful system. And that system is obedience to who? Allah. Obedience to Allah. That's the beauty of the system in Islam. Husband obeys Allah, the wife obeys Allah, the children obey Allah, the father obeys Allah, the mother obeys Allah, everybody obeys Allah. The ruler obeys Allah. And so obedience to Allah is where we start. After that, there is a system in Islam, a system that governs the way that families work. The way that families work. There's a system that governs the way families work. For example, children obey their mother and father. And their mother is the most deserving of their companionship and the excellence of their companionship. Your mother, your mother, your mother. So that mother, she has the obedience of her children. And she, in turn, also obeys her husband in that which is not disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. There is no obedience to creation if it means disobeying the Creator. There is no obedience to creation if it means disobeying the Creator. It's very important for people to see the issue of any obedience within the family, like children obedience to their mother, is to realize that this person is a human being and they're going to get things right and they're going to get things wrong, but that you aim to please Allah by following the rules that Allah sent down. And so that doesn't mean that the husband will always get it right, and it doesn't mean that the mother will always get it right for her children, or that the husband will always make the right decision for his family. It's not the case. But it just means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded you with something, and you do your best to fulfill that command. And so it requires patience, it requires overlooking people's faults, it requires love of Allah before everything else. Because otherwise you're thinking, this is such a crazy decision, why did you decide to do that? Why are you asking me to do that? Why? But actually, if you're thinking about obeying Allah Azza wa Jal, you see, you know what it is? My love of Allah will be enough, inshaAllah ta'ala, to give me the patience to be able to endure the difficulties that sometimes come in this type of situation. There's no doubt that when it comes to issues of obedience, there is no obedience in the haram. And there is no obedience in that which causes extreme harm to a person. لا ضرر ولا ضرار. For example, a mother says to her son, divorce your wife. It's very harmful to him, harmful to her, harmful to his children. Divorce is halal. But the mother, she says to her son, divorce your wife. This is extreme harm. And he's not required to obey her, but he's required to be kind and respectful and obedient and polite in the way that he responds to his mother. In the same situation here. See it as obedience to Allah. Don't see it as obedience to a person, and appreciate the good that person does for you. It's so easy to see the negatives and not appreciate the positives. And it's also very, very important. We talk about the woman or the child being their parents or whatever it might be. It's very important that a person it's very important that a person It's very important for a person to have the right intention, to have the intention to be sincere for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, and to hope to earn Allah's pleasure through that. And it's important to forgive each other, to overlook each other's mistakes, and it's important not to second guess and to make difficulties and say, you know, you told me to do this and you are wrong, and I told you you were wrong, and those things. So those are a few points that come to mind. Why can a man marry a non-Muslim woman, but a woman can't marry a non-Muslim man? So I don't agree that a man can marry a non-Muslim woman. Absolutely, I think that needs to be restricted. A man could potentially marry a Jewish or Christian woman, a Muslim man, under some circumstances with some conditions, not unrestrictedly. As for a Muslim woman, we've just answered the question by reading the previous question. If a Muslim woman were then to be required to be obedient to her husband, what would happen? We would have put a situation where a Muslim is required to be under the authority of a non-Muslim. And that is not something that Allah Azza wa Jal, and He told us He would do. He promised us that He would not place us, the Sharia will not place you in a situation where you are subservient to a non-Muslim. She would be in that situation under the authority of a non-Muslim husband, and she would be then listening to him and following his rules and things like that. And that would put her in a situation which would compromise her in her religion, which is not the other way around. But the Muslim man is not allowed to marry any non-Muslim woman. There are some restrictions in that, and there are situations and circumstances for it. Is donating blood halal? It could be. In general, it's something that is not problematic, because what you're donating does not harm you in anything. You're not donating, something that will kill you or cause severe harm to you. You're just actually donating something which is you have and you can donate. But there might be some further details about that, so it's important to check about specific situations. And Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. What's your advice about family who think you're an extremist because you're giving advice to them? Just take them back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Remind them of how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to be. And remind them that all you're doing is trying to be like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions. And talk to them about the akhirah. Say to them, Yawm al-Qiyamah, if I give you good advice and I tell you to be like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, do you think that Allah would reward me or punish me for it? And if you believe Allah would reward me for it, then I'm not really an extremist, am I? And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Should you focus on paying off a loan with interest as quickly as possible, or is it sufficient to pay it off slowly while investing the remaining money? The first thing a person must do if they have an interest-bearing loan is to make tawbah and turn back and say that what I've done is an evil thing, and resolve never, ever, ever to go back to it again. That's the first thing. The second thing the person must try to do is to have that interest cancelled and waived, even if it means going to court. Usually there are ways and means that you can ask for that interest to be waived by certain arrangements in court and so on. They have to do it. Number 3, to reduce and remove that interest in the fastest way possible. So whether that is to pay it immediately, to borrow some money in a halal way, to clear it so that it can be removed as quickly as possible. This question says, if I have an addiction, how is the best approach to stop it and never go back to it? So the very first thing to understand about an addiction is a struggle that where changes happen in your brain and the way you feel about things. And it's something which is really a challenge to overcome. I don't want for anybody to understand that addiction is just something, it's something small, just say astaghfirullah and you should never do it again. Addiction is something big, and it's something hard to get over, and it's a struggle that might be for some people a lifelong struggle, but Allah makes it easy for those that He wills. The very first thing is make dua to Allah. Make sincere dua to ask Allah's forgiveness, to ask Allah to help you to stop, because nothing is difficult for Allah. Number 2, look at what causes that addiction. What are the triggers? And reduce and remove these triggers. Remove them where you can, and where you can't remove them, reduce them. For example, a person says, and this is another similar question came about being addicted to haram, videos and what have you. It's the same thing. The first thing is stop doing it. And resolve, I'm not going to do it again. Number 2, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness. Ask Allah to make it easy for you to stop. Ask Allah to clean your heart, to take this out of your heart. After that, look at what's causing it. If it's your phone, get rid of your phone. If it's your phone, change the settings. If it's your phone, put something on there that blocks it. It might not just be that. It might be that you've got a wandering eye, and that's leading you to these things. Like you're looking at, let's say, a video or whatever, and you're seeing pictures of women and pictures of people uncovered, and you're just seeing it all the time. And then after that, you're going looking for this haram content. And the trigger for it is seeing all this stuff on Instagram every day. So you have to take the steps to remove anything that would lead you, anything that would lead you to this addiction. It could be the friends you're with, it could be, the job that you have, it could be the place that you live. And the more you take steps to remove it, the closer you're going to be to Allah, and the more Allah is going to help you. And then if you fall into it again, pick yourself up, start again, the same process. Realize you have a Lord that forgives and a Lord that punishes, and ask Him to forgive you, and keep going, and ask Him to make it easy, and open your heart. And then look at the practical ways people can stop. There are practical ways. If it's a drug addiction, for example, you may need to speak to a medical professional who can help you with some things that would facilitate for you to be able to move away from that drug and to lessen the feeling of addiction that you have, or to cope with some of the symptoms that happen when you stop taking that drug. These are all things you look at. Why am I taking it? Where am I? What's the trigger? Who is it? Is it my friends? Is it something that goes on when I get down, when I get stressed? What is it? Is it because I don't have? And how can I replace it with something else? How can I replace, for example, with something else? And I'm not saying a one-for-one replacement, but for example, a person says, I'm gonna concentrate on my getting fit and healthy and my exercise, and inshallah that will reduce that feeling I have where I feel like I need to take this and this and this substance, for example. And so a person looks at the reason, but most of all, the person begs Allah and asks Allah to make it easy for them. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Inshallah ta'ala, I would like to have a full video on the topic of addiction, because it's a big topic. I'm just scratching the surface here, but just small answers to whatever we can do, inshallah. Is it halal to buy digital currency like Bitcoin? Is there an Islamic version? I'm very reluctant to speak about something that is relatively new and needs to be really, really well researched. So I would leave that question for someone who knows it better, inshallah ta'ala. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best, but my default position would be, if I don't know something is allowed, especially in these issues of finance, I'm going to stay away from it until I feel completely convinced that it is. If a man in Islam is restricted to 4 wives, why can he have as many concubines as possible? So sometimes any questions come and you realize that, it's not a question that someone's going through today. They're not going through it because this is happening today, because it's not happening today. But they're asking about the Islamic ruling of that which your right hands possess, and why is that person allowed? So I'm going to give a very simple answer to that. A wife is a huge responsibility in the sight of Allah. وَأَخَذْنَا مِنْكُمْ مِيثَاقًا غَلِيظًا. They took from you a heavy oath. A wife has rights that are far, far more than مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ. Although they also have rights, no doubt. But the rights and responsibilities towards the wife are huge. And that's why Maria radiallahu anha, and she was gifted to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he offered to marry her sallallahu alaihi wasallam, instead of her being in the situation that she was, enslaved. He offered to marry her, and she said words to the effect of, it's easier for me and for you, I prefer to stay like this. It's easier for me and for you. Why is it easier for me and for you? First of all, I don't have to take on the responsibilities of a wife. And you don't have to take on the responsibilities of a husband. But the responsibilities are the responsibilities of the مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ, And that's a big responsibility as well, because the Prophet ﷺ said, As-salat, as-salah, wa ma malakat aymanukum. The prayer, and take care of those that are that are in your possession. Take care of them. Don't burden them with more than they can bear. Don't clothe them with what you clothe yourself with. Feed them with what you feed yourself with. Take care of them. Look after them. But for that reason, the issue is not the concubines are not coming and complaining that you didn't give me this many nights and you gave her that many nights. Does that make sense? And she's not coming and saying you didn't give me this many nights, you give her this many nights. He didn't give her. The issue is not that those responsibilities are not there. So that doesn't have the same restriction. At the same time, practically, as many as possible. Realistically, read the seerah, read how the Prophet ﷺ and the companions used to be. And you will see in that, insha'Allah ta'ala, that they had the best standard of dealing with every single person, the way they dealt with people. And it was not a matter of having as many, say, ما ملكت أيمانكم and so on as possible. Like the issue is that the two are different. The two are different. And also, the issue of the one that is al-Yamin, the issue here is that person, at the end of the day, it's an ownership. It's like property, and that property is up to the person to dispose of it in the way that they want, in accordance with Islamic law. Of course, it's a person, a human being you're talking about. So the issue, there are rules and regulations within Islam, but it's not the same restriction that it is in terms of a nikah contract. How do you find a spouse? A lot of my friends find on Instagram, but I don't have photos on myself. I don't think photos on Instagram is not a good way to find a spouse. Finding a spouse comes from two things. Number one, getting the Islamic knowledge of how to find a spouse properly. Attending a proper, lesson and getting good Islamic knowledge, and then implementing that knowledge. And in terms of ways I personally would recommend you prepare about yourself a profile, not a picture, but who are you and who are you looking for? It can be just one A4 sheet of paper if you want. Split it in two. Who are you? Who are you looking for? That way, when you go and speak to people and say, I'm looking for marriage, you speak to the Imam of the masjid, or you speak to some family members, or you speak to some community leaders, then at the end of the day, you have something to say. Look, this is me, and this is who I'm looking for. See if you find somebody suitable for me, inshallah ta'ala. Speaking to people, definitely. Family members, 100%. Friends who might have siblings or whatever, or relatives. Speaking to people in the community who are good at arranging marriages. Speaking to the Imam of the masjid and other people like that. And then after that, I really think there is a place for apps and websites that allow people to find profiles of suitable people without extensive chatting and pictures and all of that. But they actually allow people just to share profiles. This is who I am. This is who I'm looking for. This is who I am. This is who I'm looking for. And then they share the number for the wali and the potential to find a match. I think there's a big role for those to play. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. If you're a student of knowledge and you're able to do hijrah, are you allowed to stay for a while to be there for the regular people and to give da'wah? In some circumstances, yes, I think that is acceptable. I think if a person says that there is a fard kifaya here, to leave that print for the people and to be there for the people, and they need an imam of the masjid, a teacher and so on, and I'm able to do that for a short time while having every intention of that hijrah, but I'm there for a very short time to deliver that need, then yes, inshallah ta'ala, I think that's a reasonable assumption. Tell us your story. That's a long topic. My story is a long story. I give you the summary of it. I was blessed with I can't put it into words, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me to accept Islam. And at that time I was 14 years old. And there's nothing that has ever happened to me and that can compare to that. That is just the greatest blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this world, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides you to Islam. I went through a phase where I was struggling to practice the religion, and I was a bit confused, and I was trying. I had a lot of love for Islam, but I was really struggling with not matching up to that love, and not actually implementing it the way that I should be. And the second probably of these great blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided me around the age of 18 or 19 to actually leave that kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, not really doing things properly kind of way, and to actually really seriously commit myself to practicing Islam according to the Qur'an and the Sunnah and what the companions were upon, to the best of my ability and the best of my knowledge. And that after Islam, there is no greater blessing than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide you to the Sunnah and to give you the ability to actually practice it. Shortly after that, I was able to apply to go to Medina University, and by Allah's grace I was accepted to be able to go there. I went there, I studied the Arabic program for 2 years, and I studied Hadith for 4.5 years, something like that by the time it finished. And then I spent some time in Riyadh studying, and then since then I was blessed to meet many mashayikh and study in different countries and be able to spend some time with some of the different shuyukh and to study from different people. And all of that is from the blessing of Allah Azza wa Jal. And it's not something we deserve. And right now I'm a teacher at Al-Madrasatul Umariyah. And if you're watching this live stream, then you probably know that. And that's the summary of my story. What would you advise someone getting low on Iman? I'd advise you 2 things. One side is about cleaning things up, and the other side is about building something new. So in terms of cleaning something up, it's got to be repentance, coming back to Allah, istighfar, asking Allah to renew the Iman that's in your heart. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ الْإِيمَانَ لَيَخْلَقُ فِي جَوْفِ أَحَدِكُمْ كَمَا يَخْلَقُ الثَّوْبِ فَاسْأَلُوا اللَّهَ أَنْ يُجَدِّدَ الْإِيمَانَ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. Iman wears out in the chest of one of you like your clothes wears out. So ask Allah to renew the Iman that's in your heart. Ask Allah to renew the Iman. Say, oh Allah, renew my Iman for me. Ask Allah's forgiveness. Ask Allah to increase your Iman. And then build on, that's you're clearing things away with tawbah, with repentance, with asking Allah's forgiveness, asking Allah to renew the Iman is in your heart. Now build. And build with the things that you know will increase your Iman exponentially. And from those things that increase a person's Iman exponentially, a huge increase. Number 1, seeking beneficial knowledge. You watch a beneficial lecture and straight away you feel that low Iman is coming up. Reflecting upon the ayat of Allah in the Qur'an and reflecting upon the ayat of Allah in the universe. Reflecting upon the Qur'an, reading the Qur'an, straight away you feel that Iman go up. Reflecting upon the ayat of Allah in the universe, in yourself and what's around you increases you in Iman. Helping your brother and sister for the sake of Allah. Doing something that's difficult for you. Mujahadatun nafs, fighting against yourself. Finding something that's hard for you, you find it really, really hard, and actually just pushing through and doing it, no matter what. For example, he says, really, really hard for me to get up for Fajr. I'm always late. I'm really going to try to get up for Tahajjud and Fajr, and I'm going to try to go to the masjid. And how hard it is, and just trying and failing, trying and failing and trying and failing, but you just keep on going. You feel the increase in Iman. There are many, many things, but these are just a few. So I'm talking about the things which give you a quick boost. And then the remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal, to keep yourself always connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by never letting your tongue go dry. Always keeping your tongue moist with the remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal. A student who can't pray Jumu'ah because of school. The first thing that we would say to the student who can't pray Jumu'ah because of school is, the first thing that you should do is to approach your school, if not yourself, then through your Islamic center or masjid, to ask them permission. If they don't give you permission, then ask them the permission to hold a small Jumu'ah prayer inside the school. For example, the students, Muslim students, just come together for a very small, just the minimum standard of the Jumu'ah prayer, and they perform the prayer. And if it's explained nicely to the school, they might not have any problem with it. They might say, of course, we provide for you a small space for Jumu'ah. The most knowledgeable among you gives a small reminder, very small, just the basics of the khutbah, pillars of the khutbah which is needed, very, very small, it's 5 minutes, and the salah. If that doesn't happen, try to change the school. If you can't change the school and you don't have any other option at all, then you realize that if you ever miss Jumu'ah, you have to pray Dhuhr instead. You can't miss prayer completely. But a lot of schools will allow you to have a Jumu'ah in the school if you explain to them what it is. And so we're just going to be 10 of us, 15 of us, with a small number of people, 20 of us, 30 of us. We'll just have, you can pre-print what you're going to say, so the school doesn't get scared you're going to say something wrong. Just this is what I'm going to say, and then we're going to pray together. And we have to do that on a Friday. Maybe the local Islamic center can help you to explain that to your school, inshallah ta'ala. How can I say an excuse to a member of the opposite gender when they try to shake my hand? I feel embarrassed, and I feel I'm embarrassing them. And I'm not giving a good picture of Islam. So it's a beautiful question. So the very first thing is, if you can inform the person before you meet them, that would definitely be better. That would definitely be better. If you can, before you meet the person. For example, if I'm going for a meeting, I might make a note in the email when we arrange the meeting. If I think the meeting is going to be with a female, and say that in the meeting it's a non-Muslim female, and say I would just so that we don't to avoid any embarrassment, as part of my religion, I wouldn't normally shake hands with a member of with someone of the opposite gender. I would like to just let you know about that, so that there's not any embarrassment caused, and I really thank you for your understanding. If that's not possible, then try to avoid the situation happening at all. I definitely will fill my arms with things, so I'll be like, I've got kid in one arm, iPad in the other arm, hi, pleased to meet you. I will try to avoid the situation happening. The second thing, or third thing, is that in this situation, greet them first. Don't let them greet you. Because when they greet you on their terms. Hand comes out. So instead, if you've got your hands full and you're like, hi, pleased to meet you, hope everything is well, and that's it. And then that way, you've greeted them. I also like the hand on heart. I think that works very well. I think the hand on heart comes across as being very sincere. And it shows that you're not willing to shake the hand, but it actually shows that it is quite a reasonably sincere and well understood gesture for most people. So even if someone puts their hand out, I would still say, put the hand on heart. I'm really pleased to meet you, and please forgive me for not shaking your hand. As a Muslim, we don't shake hands, men and women, and I apologize for any inconvenience caused. It's my fault that I didn't tell you about it, and be very apologetic like that. Be prepared for someone to ask why. Why? Am I not a human being? Oh, of course. Men and women in Islam, of course, have contact all the time. However, there are some rules to do with how we respect each other. And one of those rules is that the physical contact is limited to the close family members, children and things like that. And it's not between adults that are sort of not close family members to each other. Sometimes I might say in Islam it's disrespectful for me to shake your hand. It would be a disrespect to you it would be disrespectful to you if I were to shake your hand. So I hope you understand that, and I do apologize, and you can put the hand on the heart type of gesture or something similar. I've seen people give something instead. People put out their hand, give a business card. You just need to disarm them, from that situation of being really, 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 angry and upset. But the more you do before you meet them, and the more you do at the very beginning, will be better. But sometimes at the end of the meeting, the person might still, the first time you came in with that iPad in your hand, and you're like, yeah, hi, pleased to meet you. And then after that, at the end of the meeting, the hand comes out again, and then I'm going to put hand on heart. My microphone is in the way, so I can't do it properly. And I'm going to say that, look, please forgive me. I do apologize. As a Muslim, it's not allowed for me to shake hands with, a lady who's not a close family member. And I really do apologize that I didn't tell you about that before, or whatever it might be. And that kind of thing. You put the blame on yourself, not on Islam. I'm not apologizing for Islam. I don't apologize for Islam. I'm apologizing that I didn't tell you about this before. And the likes of that. Just take a couple more questions, inshallah ta'ala, and then I think we'll have to leave the rest for another session, inshallah ta'ala. How should you be with your best friend? What's their haqq? Their haqq is an-nasiha. And an-nasiha here, it doesn't mean just giving them advice, but being genuinely sincere with them and doing what is in their best interests. Ad-Deenun Nasiha, this religion is about behaving sincerely, behaving in a sincere way towards others. That's what this religion is about. So it's not just advice, it's behaving in a sincere way towards that person. And they have the rights of the Muslim, of course. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. We take this one as the last question. Which country do you recommend making hijrah to? I recommend that you really research your hijrah very well. I don't think there's a one-word answer. I think that you have to research it really well. You have to see that it's going to work for you. You have to figure out where you're going to go, how is it going to work, where you're going to stay, what kind of environment you're going into, and do your research. I mean, for example, as you know, we're based in the UAE for a lot of the year. And the UAE is an amazing place, but people often don't do their research. So they will go and they'll move to a very touristy area, and they get the wrong impression of what the country is like, and they end up feeling like they're not practicing their religion as they would like to be. They don't have the facilities they would like to have, and they feel that they are surrounded by a lot of fitna and a lot of problems. But a lot of it is because they actually didn't move to the kind of area which would have suited them, and they didn't do their research before. So it's very important to do your research. And no doubt for me, Saudi has a very special place in my heart. That's personal, personal preference. But at the same time, it's not the easiest place in the world to move to, depending on, your circumstances and finances and visas and things like that. So you have to do your research, and you have to select a place that works for you and that you've researched where you're going and you know whereabouts in that country you're going to live and what sort of challenges there might be. And inshallah ta'ala, if you do that, I think you can be very, very successful, inshallah ta'ala, in your hijrah. I'm going to stop there, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, because we have still got around 20 questions here, and on the next sheet I've got 70, but some of them have been answered. So altogether maybe 60 questions. So I think one more session, inshallah ta'ala, we can do, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. That is what Allah Azza wa Jal made easy for me to mention. These are all, by the way, for those of you who are joining and catching up late, these are all questions that came to us during the Sweden and Denmark tour. So inshallah ta'ala, we will finish them this weekend, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. We'll make a time. We could possibly do something on Sunday maybe, or whatever Allah makes easy, or Saturday we could do something, inshallah ta'ala, so that we can finish these questions, inshallah ta'ala, as I promised I would finish them. And there's a lot, so we've got around about probably in the region of something like 50 or 60 questions left to go, inshallah ta'ala. We'll do them in a third session. That is what Allah Azza wa Jal made easy for me to mention, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Wassalatu wassalamu ala nabiyyina Muhammad